Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about the new history of the DC Universe, issue 1 by Mark Waid, Jerry Ordway, Matt Herms, Todd Nock, and John Callers. DC Comics' new history timeline is finally here, and it's up to Mark Waid to kind of bring everything together in a cohesive, digestible form for people. To do this, we begin with a cool little framing device on how this book is being set out, which is with Barry Allen, who is freshly retired from his time as the Flash, and he's decided he just can't, take retirement as it is and can't just sit around. So instead he decides to chronicle the knowledge and experience he's had on his myriad of adventures as the Flash and console it down into a cohesive story for people to understand. Now, when this was done in the past, there's been a couple of books or, one-shots that kind of try and sort through the history of the DC Universe. It's been done every couple of decades, more or less. And usually it's pretty light, it just covers the immediate history around whenever that book kind of came out. Maybe it's a lead up to a big event and it's just kind of catching people up on something. But here Waid goes, no, that's not happening. We're going all the way back to the birth of this universe, starting with Perpetua, her son's Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and World Forger, and the creation of the universe. Now, because I know some people are going to mention it in the comments, no, this universe is not created by Dr. Manhattan as it was in the Doomsday Clock, because he reverted all of the changes that he made, so he had no hand in creating the DC universe anymore. That was the old universe pre-Rebirth, so he is not involved in this at all. Could they still work him in? I guess there's a possibility, but being that it's set here, the birth of this universe, I don't think we're going to get that at all. I don't think we're going to get a single mention of Dr. Manhattan. As a continuity and DC history junkie, this entire book is my jam. I've been waiting for this book for a very long time, and the level of detail and things that it's covering is actually pretty incredible. Things you wouldn't normally see in a book like this, or in a comic book in general, things that you would usually just gloss over. Waid is no, we're actually going to talk about that. Waid also manages to work in some of the Vertigo properties like Sandman and Lucifer, tying them into the creation of the universe, mentioning things like the Silver City, the Angel's Fortress that Lucifer was cast out from, and how Sandman works. All really cool stuff, all the weird stuff that I wasn't sure how he would manage to work in, but I just like that it's as simple as oh no, that stuff does exist in this universe. Here it is. From the more weirder and wonderful Vertigo stuff, we move into the more classical DC stuff with Guardians of Oa, the creation of the Green Lanterns, the Manhunters, the Dark Stars, and of course the Fourth World, birth of Darkseid, Orion, and Highfather. The book does have a very speedy feel to it, we've kind of gone through all of this quite quickly, but it's also covering eons of history in a page. You can't just spend a lot of time doing that. But the thing is, as someone who I want to say is rather versed quite well in all of this particular DC stuff, the cosmic stuff, it does do a pretty fantastic job of actually covering its bases and explaining, okay, these are what the Guardians are, this is what they came from, here's the Manhunters, all that sort of stuff. Fourth World stuff is great. So it does it really well in that it keeps it moving at a really nice pace, but also explains quite a bit as it's doing it. Barry's research takes his notes back to Earth, where Atlantis is created and Arion battles his dark twin Garn. Atlantis is soon destroyed and sunk to the bottom of the ocean by Eclipso, which causes the kingdom to become split into Poseidonus and Tritonus, something Waid has actually been using quite a fair bit of in his World's Finest book as of late. The book also begins taking a turn into things I reckon most people are familiar with, the birth of the Amazons, Hippolyta and Themyscira, the caveman that would become Vandal Savage finds the meteor that would bestow him with a great intellect, and the Rock of Eternity is built by the Circle of Eternity, whose great powers are given to a slave known as Teth Adam, who he uses the powers to overthrow his oppressors, but the powers twist and corrupt him into becoming Black Adam, kills the Circle, and he keeps the powers for himself. The book then dives into a section of the DCU that I myself aren't really familiar with, and one that I've not really dived into all that much, which is the more medieval, magical fantasy side, specifically things like Camelot, Merlin, King Arthur, and the Knights of the Round Table. I appreciate the time taken to explain how that all fits into the quote-unquote real world of the DCU, being that whenever you think of Arthur and Merlin, you think them of storybook characters. You hear stories of them. You don't necessarily think of them as quote-unquote real characters that exist in this world alongside characters like Batman and Superman and all that. But I like that Waid is working them into the history of this universe and kind of separating it out from Earth as well. He's not making it say, oh yeah, this was set on Earth. It's much like Gem World, where it's kind of its own realm sort of thing. It also leads to some stuff that I didn't even know was real, and stuff that I learn in this book, such as Merlin and his half-brother, who happens to be Etrigan, and how Etrigan is banished to the body of Jason Blood. That's stuff I didn't actually know. I didn't know that he and Merlin were related, and I kind of like that that's kind of like one of these sort of connectors between the more fantastical part of the DCU to the more super heroic side, because obviously we've seen Etrigan fight alongside characters like the Justice League and the Justice League Dark, as well as then dabble in the more magical side. So I like that he's like one of those people that can kind of travel between both worlds. Meanwhile, out in space, Metron finds X-Element, using it to make the Mobius chair and the boom tubes that Apocalypse and New Genesis use. Back on Earth, Ra's al Ghul finds the Lazarus Pits and then founded the League of Shadows and the League of Assassins. At this point in the timeline, we're getting pretty close to the 1700s, 1800s, so we start seeing more familiar things. Frankenstein's monster being created and then taking the name of his creator to become an agent of SHADE, Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive. Since we're getting closer to modern times, some more surprising inclusions begin appearing as Wade manages to tie the Dakotaverse stuff into the timeline, as in the early 1800s, a baby is rocketed to Earth and found by a plantation worker, where he then grows up with great powers to become the hero known as Icon. This one really quite surprised me, but in a good way, since I really enjoyed a lot of those Dakotaverse books, like the Static Shock book, the Icon book, and recently the Power Company one-shot. The continuity of those books really has always been up in the air to me. Like, sometimes they're in continuity, other times it's kind of nebulous whether they are or not. So I like that here is Wade sort of, laying down the gauntlet, saying, like, these ones are in continuity, here is where it's going to happen. The Wild West, along with its heroes, comes and goes, and the rise of the pulp hero begins as Sven Nelson is accidentally killed by Nabu while searching for him in Egypt. Nabu, feeling penance, decides to take Kent Nelson, Sven's son, as his apprentice. Kent will eventually become Dr. Fate. Elsewhere, a cult called the Seven rose to power, so Dr. Richard Occult donned a red suit and a coat to combat them, making him the century's first superhero. Like a domino effect, more and more heroes begin to emerge as World War II kicks off. Creation of the Blackhawks, Sandman, Miss America, and Spy Smasher. Eventually, the Justice Society of America is formed, beginning with only a few members, but as the years and the war progressed, more and more members would join, leading to a wide and diverse selection of heroes now defending the Earth. So it's right here that a big change occurs, and a big change that I know a lot of people found out about a couple of weeks back, and was for some reason really upset about, but I really like, and it is that Wonder Woman is obviously on the JSA here. She's on some of the covers and everything is leading the JSA, and many assumed it was Diana, but that's not the case, as it's her mother, Hippolyta, who has taken up the Wonder Woman mantle and using it to help fight against the Nazis and various other threats during World War II. This is something we've seen before, Hippolyta being Wonder Woman, that is, but to my knowledge, I don't think in the main timeline it has happened until now. It's a fun new idea for Wonder Woman, who outside of the Absolute Universe has been racked with just boring status quo changes, but I like that this adds some sort of legacy to her role as a warrior for peace. She's kind of following in her mother's footstep. I also really like it that it further divorces her from whatever they intend to do with her father, whether it be Zeus or whether she's made from clay, kind of further divorces her from all of that things and makes it so that she kind of follows more of her mother than whatever they choose to do with her father, or whatever they decide to make her father in this new continuity, because I'm not even sure what her current origin is. That's how fucked Wonder Woman's origin is in the main universe. It changes constantly. And again, this book's probably going to change it again, or at least kind of streamline it a little bit. Thanks to these heroes all springing up, villains also spring up in the form of the Injustice Society, who combat the heroes through the decades. We then move into territory we see another giant sweeping change, and it's mostly related to Jeff Johns' JSA and Stargirl books detailing the Lost Children and how they will return to continuity. Firstly, there is also a part that reveals that the old school Green Arrow and Speedy we've seen during this time are actually time displaced from the future, explaining why they are there when the more modern origins kind of update when they first appeared, like they weren't meant to be here. So I like Wade is kind of rounding that out and connecting it up with Johns' JSA and Stargirl stuff. And obviously the Lost Children is a big one here as well, which is all these people and sidekicks were brought back into the fold and made continuity again. People like Airwave, who Wade has actually been using quite a fair bit of recently, in Justice League Unlimited and the We Are Yesterday event from that book. During World War II, even more heroes begin showing up, from the All-Star Squadron, Young All-Stars, the Unknown Soldier, Sergeant Rock, the Losers, the Hellcats, and many more to win the war against the Nazis. The post-war world leads to the heroes being seen as enemies of the state, as many refuse to reveal their secret identities and sign on with the government. These last couple of pages really do rush through quite a bit, although as I said before, this is stuff I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, especially when it comes to the JSA sort of stuff, about how they were, the heroes of World War II, government, shunned them after World War II and they kind of had to disband. Waid and his team filling the pages with more unknown teams is great though. He mentions stuff like I said before, the Losers, a team I'm sure no one has thought about in a very long time, especially outside of that failed early 2010s movie they did, which was kind of like an update on them based on another update of the team. So I'm sure many people don't actually know that this is the original Losers team. Stuff like that really draws me in, especially when you can tell a writer and their team have actually done the homework, have actually dived into the mountains and mountains of comics and material to find these sorts of things and kind of try and make it all make sense and kind of lay it all out here for you to read. Because of the refusal to bend to the government control, the JSA are disbanded, and while some tried to fill the void, none could ever live up to their legacy. The decades go on without any heroes until the government reaches out to Niles Calder, Will Magnus, Martin Stein, and Simon Stagg to create the Superman Project. While in a small Colorado lab, Dr. Mark Saul Erdl's teleportation tests end up being a success and bring forth the Martian Manhunter John Jones to Earth. While all this happens as well, across the galaxy, a small ship rockets away from an exploding planet, bringing with it an infant that will change the DCU forever. Ending with a tease of more modern alien heroes is great here. It signals that there is a turn in the universe coming, a turn to the more cosmic and kind of opening it up to a much larger world. While the book ends here, there is also a very cool set of research pages put together by Dave Wilgoats, which is basically him and Mark Waid having sifted through all of this material to create a somewhat cohesive timeline of events. And you can read through this entire little research notes, and it has all of the different issues that this is the first time we see Sandman, this is the first time the Starheart appears. And I really love that this issue has done this, because this was something I was really looking forward to seeing. I like that it's all kind of laid out in a somewhat cohesive through line where you can kind of pick up all of these different issues and just read the full story here. And it's great. I think more comics need to do stuff like this where we get to see, oh, they're referencing this thing in this book and this is the exact book and the exact page that it happens on. Like the attention of detail in it is just wonderful, and I'd love to see more of it, and I can't wait to see more of it as the issues progress, because I imagine it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we go through the 4 issues of this series. The New History of the DC Universe issue 1 was a really fun read. It's in no way meant to be read like a traditional comic though. This isn't a story that has a beginning, middle, and end like a single comic usually does. It's meant to be more of a reference source book, if nothing else, something you can kind of pick up and point to a certain part of the DCU history, or you want to find out what happened to Perpetua or something, or what happened to the Starheart, who owned it. You can pick this book up and it will tell you. As a continuity junkie, I thoroughly loved what the issue covers, how it smooths things out and how it presents it with the flash framing device and kind of sets it in its reality, where this is something that someone in the DCU could actually grab and actually read. I think that's a genius idea on how to frame this type of stuff. The next few issues will really prove if this is a true win though, as the more modern history of the DC universe is very messy with different reboots and retcons and stuff. So I'm looking forward to see how Waid sorts through all of that and how he makes sense of that sort of stuff. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.